In this course, you will learn how to transform messy, hard-to-maintain JavaScript code into clean, readable, and professional quality code that scales. This course is created by Tapas. He'll help you understand what code smell is, why it matters, and how to refactor step by step using proven clean code principles, real examples, and modern tooling like ESLint and Prettier. You'll learn to write code that is maintainable, elegant, and future-proof.
Hey, how are you doing? I'm Tapas from India. Extremely delighted to bring this session in front of you. You can call it as a crash course to understand what is code smell and how to make your code clean. I consider this topic is very fundamental in terms of software engineering, software development, and that's the motivation to bring it in front of you. Before we get started, a brief introduction about myself. By education, I'm a computer science and engineering grad, and by profession, I'm a software engineer. I have spent 2 decades building products, software services, and delighted many customers across the globe. Currently, I'm working really hard to push my dream startup called Creovis. And beside that, whenever I get time, I love teaching and I teach about software engineering, full stack engineering, software development, everything that is fundamental. You can check out my YouTube channel JavaScript. I'm also a contributor to FreeCodeCamp News with articles and the handbook since last 4 years, and also started to contribute on their YouTube channel, and that's how I'm here today. With that, let us now get into the session agenda to understand what are you going to learn today. We will start the session with why clean code matters, why we have to think about clean code. And then we want to put some learning objectives. See, this is very important. Everything that you'll be learning from session, it should be the value of your time. It means that you should have certain objectives around that you can map with everything that we'll be learning in this session. Very essential, right? And then we'll be talking about very basic software development lifecycle and the coding phases, because this session itself is related to coding. After that, we're going to talk about the core of the topic is code smell. I'm going to explain to you what code smell means and then why code smell is really, really bad. Then we'll be getting into something called a clean code. Then a very important topic, how to detect code smell. And the more experience you become as a developer, you have to learn how to detect code smell and how to tell your peers, even to yourself, that this particular piece of code doesn't look good. After that, we'll be talking about the common code smell in JavaScript. So the code smell and the clean code, the concept of it is programming language agnostic. It is not related to a programming language very strongly. However, while demonstrating it, we need certain programming language. I am most familiar with JavaScript and TypeScript. So I'll be showing you a few common code smell using JavaScript. The similar code smells you are going to find in Python or any other programming languages as well. After that, I'm going to show you how can you refactor those code smell to make them as clean code. I'm going to give you certain best practices to follow and then going to leave you with few fantastic resources that you can follow even after this course. After that, I'm going to give you certain tasks and assignments so that you can practice whatever you have learned. Once you make it practice, you find the pattern and you become very confident about it. One thing to call out, if you are a beginner to programming or have spent only a few years in software development, I would suggest to go slow in this session. Try to grasp everything that we are discussing over here. Try to take good notes and try to revisit them later point in time. If you're aware of these concepts already, it will be a great opportunity for you to brush up the same concepts, and you can even go in 1.5x speed if you want to. Writing code is easy, but writing good code, that's the challenge. Many projects fail not because the code doesn't run, but because no one can understand and maintain that code in a long run. I have seen teams where adding a new feature brings lot of chaos, and after some point in time, debugging become real nightmare. I like this analogy. Think your code like your kitchen. If the kitchen is clean, you become a master chef. You enjoy cooking. But if the kitchen is messy, you have to waste time in finding things, you will make mistakes, you will lose patience, and the outcome, which is the food, is not going to be good at all. Hence, the purpose of this session is to make you aware of those nitty-gritty in our code that we usually put. We ignore them, which will be sitting inside the code and then spread certain smell over the period of time. and going to create a lot of problem in the long run. I hope you find it meaningful. Before we dive in, here is what you will be able to do by the end of this course. These are the objectives that you need to map to everything that we'll be talking about in this session. At the end of the session, you will be able to identify common JavaScript code smell in real code. And if you understand the pattern, you will be able to identify the similar code smell in other language syntaxes as well. Then you will be able to explain why each smell is harmful. And this is for folks who take parts in code reviews. You can review yourself, your code, or you can review somebody else's code. Both the time, it is important that you not only detect but also articulate that why certain code is a code smell and going to create harm in the long run. Then you will be able to apply practical refactoring knowledge to turn the smelly code into a clean code. You will be able to use simple tools, techniques to make a code smell to a clean code. And then you will be able to complete at least 3 tasks and assignments that will be giving you to boost your confidence in case you were not aware of these concepts. So please keep these objectives in mind, take note of the things that we'll be learning, and then try to draw a pointer from the things that we'll be learning to each of these objectives to see whether your learning objectives are meeting or not. All right, with all these goals set, let's place coding and refactoring in context. Where do this practice really fit in the software development lifecycle, which is SDLC? Most of you probably already know about SDLC, Software Development Lifecycle. Software Development Lifecycle consists of a bunch of phases. What are those phases? The first phase comes where the planning comes. To build your software, you start doing planning, and then you get requirement from your customer. You start doing those requirement analysis. Once the analysis is done, what you do, you start getting into doing the design and architecture. Once the design and architecture reach to a stage, you are supposed to start the implementation, which is also known as the coding phase. As the coding phase goes on, either along with the coding phase or after the coding phase, based on the kind of model, software engineering development model you are following, you start testing and quality assurance program. And then once the software is baked, or a part of the software, a feature is baked, you think about deploying it. Once the deployment is done, it means that your software is in the hand of your customers, your end users. But that's not the end. You have to put more features. If customer finds issues, you have to fix them. That's why there is another important phase called maintenance come into picture. So in SDLC, if you see, coding is one of the phase among many. Planning, requirements, design, testing, deployment, maintenance are also there. However, many of us as a developer, we stop here because it's coding. This is directly related to the job that we do every day. But in the real world, maintainability is what makes a project successful. It doesn't mean that all the other 6 phases that we have discussed so far are not important. All these phases are very important, but I'm talking about the focus. As a developer, we give lot of focus in coding, but we need to keep our eyes, our ear open to make sure that we understand where our coding going to. It is going to till the phase of maintenance. So for a successful project, maintenance also plays a very, very important role. We all need to understand that coding is not just about typing and matching the syntax. It is more than that. It is about describing something to human and also to the machine. Now that we know where coding fits, let's talk about the enemy. Let's talk about code smell. The term code smell was popularized by Martin Fowler and Kent Beck. First thing to clarify, code smell doesn't mean that your code is broken, but it means that something is off, something is not right. It is kind of a hint that deeper inside there is a problem that might be existing which can cause a bigger problem tomorrow if not taken care immediately. To give an analogy again, think of it like you have a car and the car is making a noise every day whenever you're taking the car out. It still runs perfectly on the road. However, the noise increases every day. Now, if you are not paying attention to that noise, it can result into anything. It could be resulting into making the car completely stopped on the road in the dark, and you get a lot of trouble. So what you will be doing as a car owner, you will be trying your best to fix that noise as soon as possible, taking it to a mechanic or fix it by yourself. That noise is what exactly the code smell in terms of software engineering. So if we have to define code smell, we can define it in this way. Code smell is any surface level indication in the code that suggests a deeper problem in design or maintainability. Okay, your code will work, but there might be a problem that you may be overlooking today, which can come back as a boomerang tomorrow to cause more trouble. Can you see some examples right away? Yes, we can. Look into this. This is a code which is with bad indentation and it lacks spacing. Whenever we're seeing somebody's code, we would love to see that code formatted in a better way. Because if the formatting is missing, it takes away a lot of readability. And not only that, if somebody has to come tomorrow and start working on this piece of code, they'll be really frustrated because there is no proper formatting and there are high chances that there might be missing of certain operators like equals, greater than sign, plus sign, can result into a lot of bugs over the period of time. Here is an example of a function sum. It works perfectly. Whenever you pass two parameters to it, it just sum up those two numbers and then assign that to a variable called result and return that result variable from the function. Works great, but it doesn't look great. And there is a high possibility that it is going to give us back certain kind of problem tomorrow. Let's see one more. Look into this particular smell. Here long function doing many things. So there is a function called handle order. What is it doing? It is validating input, checking inventory, calculate total, processing the payment, sending the email, updating the analytics. Okay, I can understand that validating the inventory, checking the inventory, calculating the total, these are kind of related to an order. How sending an email is a generic thing, right? You can send an email for an order, you can send the email for anything else. Updating the analytics can happen for any operation in the system, not necessarily that it has to be clubbed with a single big fat function handle order. Correct? So this is another concern or another smell that we find very often in our code, where we have to think about the responsibility of each of the function and try to break them into smaller function to make them elegant and maintainable. Let's take one more. Look into this. Here we are super confident developer. Here we think JSON string, the parameter that we pass to json.parse, is something that is always going to be parsed. But what if we pass something by mistake which is not parsable and going to throw a runtime error? We are not handling that runtime error at all. We are ignoring a potential error. These are the code smell that I'm talking about. These are like those weird noises that we get from the car. Needs attention. This still works, but this needs attention. So if it still works, we have to know why to worry about it. It still works, right? Code smell is bad because, smell spreads. One bad function inspires another. We as a developer, we like productivity. If we see something is there and I can reuse, the first intention that I have in my mind is I'm going to copy that and I'm going to use that. What if the thing that I'm copying is written with smell? The bad function, that's what I'm copying. And when I'm copy pasting it elsewhere, means I'm using it elsewhere, I'm spreading that smell across my code base. So one bad function inspires another and smell spread. So it is always good to catch that early, remove it, make it clean. Second, it slows down development because code smell ultimately going to give you bugs. The more bugs you have, the more time you need to deliver a feature. And of course, it is going to scare a lot of new team members. People, come with a lot of their own experiences in terms of coding, handling software product. So once they come into a team and sees the code is full of smell, and if the person is knowledgeable about code smell, have worked a lot with clean code, they will be really scared seeing such kind of code. And another true thing is the longer a code smell stays in your code, the more expensive it becomes because it creates something called tech debts or technical debts. What are technical debts? Technical debts are something that you have created a feature by following certain customer use cases. You have delivered that feature. However, out of that feature, there are a lot of bugs, there are a lot of issues that came in. Now the customer is on top of your head that as per my SLA with you, you are supposed to give me a feature that works really well. Now I have found hundreds of bugs because of your coding, your lack of checks, your code smell, etc. You have to now fix those bugs. So these are all technical debts that you have to fix and give it back to the customer again. Tech debts are something, paying it off is really, really hard, and nobody gives you extra money for that. Sometimes you don't even get extra time for that. So please make sure whenever you find a code smell, clean them up. Now, take a look into this code. Here is a function, and the function name suggests that it is calculating something. It takes three parameters, P, T, R, and it returns a calculation. What is going on in your mind when you're seeing this code? There's nothing wrong syntactically, absolutely fine. If you pass three parameters, if those are number, it is going to do some calculation and is going to return the value to you. However, there is a code smell. What do you know? What are P, T, R? Over time, this kind of unclear code makes maintenance really, really painful. You don't know what are P, T, R. You really don't know what exactly this function is doing, what kind of calculation it is. All these things seems very ambiguous to someone who is lacking domain knowledge, just looking into the code and trying to rely on the code that somebody has written and believe that the code is going to give enough indication of what exactly this function doing. Unfortunately, it is not. So this is about code smell and why code smell is bad. Now let's talk about the antidote, which is clean code. What is a clean code? Clean code is a code which is easy to read, understand, and modify. Clean code is not just a short code. Many things that clean code means a short code. No, it is not just a short code, but it is expressive, it is predictable, and it is intention revealing. Means it clearly says what it is supposed to do. You remember this code? We have seen it just now. The calculate function with PTR is doing certain calculation, and we identified together that this is a code smell. Now, if you have to write a clean code version of this code smell, one possible version of that would be something like this, which clearly says the calculation is about calculating the simple interest. PTR having very clear naming now, P for principal, T for time, and R for the rate. And to calculate the simple interest, you have to multiply them and divide by 100. That's the calculation. Same logic, exactly same logic, left and right. But right side one is more like the natural language, which having a very clear function, clear parameter definitions, and it says very, very clearly what exactly it is doing. So it is intention revealing, it says what it is doing. It is expressive, all the name are very explicit. It is predictable because for the same principle, same time, and same rate value, it is always going to give you the same simple interest calculate. So it's great that from a code smell, we have now refactored it to make a clean code. But how do you even detect there is a code smell? Let's look into that. Detecting a smell is about becoming like a detective. Okay, so there are a few things that I want to share from experience, like how can you detect a smell in the code? Always start by the review. Do a self review of your code. Do you understand the code? Do you understand the purpose why you have written? Keep yourself in the shoe of someone else and try to read, is it clear enough what exactly it does? Always go for peer reviews. Encourage peer reviews in your organization. Give your code for review so that other person can review it, proactively review the code of someone else. Then the second thing would be look for certain signs and symptoms like code duplication, whether the code is getting duplicated in multiple places and killing reusability. Are the names unclear that nobody understand? Are there inconsistent logic around? Look for those kind of symptoms and sign when you are doing the review. And then the third thing is about the tooling. There are great tools around which you can plug in into your coding environment, which are going to alert you enough so that you can be aware of those code smell while coding itself and can refactor your code in such a way that your code become clean. So one of the tool that I love is called Prettier. It helps a lot in terms of formatting. There is another tool called ESLint. You know that there are a bunch of rules that it comes with, and all those rules are adjustable, fireable based on your need. And what it does is like if there are certain problem in your code, it is going to shout out loud with those red colors, right, on your editor. Without this particular code at the right side will run perfectly. With ESLint in picture, it is shouting on every line, saying there are some problems in each line of this JavaScript code. We are actually going to see this and going to refactor it in a while. The tool like ESLint also gives an elaborative report which you can go through to identify what's the problem in the code, what kind of code smell that we are dealing with, and you will be able to fix them very, very easily. The another way, especially for the JavaScript folks, if you are using TypeScript, which is JavaScript plus the type safety, there are few code spell will be automatically be removed by TypeScript itself, because TypeScript always care for types. You cannot randomly pass any argument for any parameters, things like that, which will be always caught early at the coding level if you're using TypeScript. Also, if you're using any other type language. But even if you're using TypeScript or any other type language, there are certain kind of smells like duplication of the code, logic inconsistencies, like the bad naming stays forever if you are not taking care of them. All right, now big thing. Let's explore some of the most common code smells and we'll also see how to fix them. One quick announcement for you. In case you are liking my teaching, I think you will be liking these two courses that I give it for free. One is called 40 Days of JavaScript. This is a complete JavaScript course from beginner to pro. And this is a task-driven course from day 1 to day 40. It's a 40 days of JavaScript. You can check it out. And there is one more course called 15 Days of React Design Pattern. Again, it is for someone who knows a bit about React, but not very confident on how to write clean code with React. This course is free and is going to teach you at least 15 design patterns to make sure that you're very confident with React. So in case it interests you, the link of both of them is in the description of this video. Go ahead and check it out. I tried to distribute the common code smells into 7 categories. Now there could be more categories, but with my research, reading, experience, I find these 7 categories are kind of standards that we can bring any of those code smell in any of those bucket. So let's get started with the first one, which is about the formatting and readability. So if you have this kind of code smell in your code, it means that you have poor indentation, you are missing spaces, you have inconsistent quotes, all this kind of problem. By the way, we are going to see example for each of this. But first, let's get a familiarity with them by understanding their name and what kind of code smell that they bring in. So you understand about the formatting and readability. The name is self-explanatory. Second one is about the name and the structure. It means that it is misleading variables, unclear function names, using of magic numbers, all this kind of problem is in the naming and structure kind of code smell. Then about the code complexity, deeply nested code, deeply nested loops, long functions. We have seen the example of it already. Too many parameters, poor modularization of the code, that kind of thing. Then comes logic and the maintainability. Often found duplicate logic, unclear conditions, not taken care of the edge cases. All these things come together in this kind of smell where logic and maintainability is crucial. Then comes design and the architecture, tight coupling, lack of cohesion, not much on the performance optimization. So this kind of thing comes under design and architecture. We're going to see code snippet for each of this. Then comes error handling and the resilience, where we see silent failures, not using try and catch, solving the errors, inconsistent error handling, that kind of thing comes under error handling and the resilience. And the final one is about the performance and efficiency, which is like unnecessary re-rendering. For example, if you're from React background, you know how crucial rendering, re-rendering is. You might have blocking loops, expensive DOM operations, all this kind of thing come under performance and efficiency. So these are the 7 category: formatting and readability, naming and structure, code complexity, logic and maintainability, design and architecture, error handling and resilience, performance and efficiency are the buckets where you can fit in most common code smells. Now, let us take a look into each of them one by one. The first one is formatting and readability. Where it matters for visual clarity and the consistency. What kind of thing that you can think of? Poor indentation, missing spaces, inconsistent quotes, all this kind of thing. This is the example we have seen already. This mail is about the bad indentation and lack of spacing. We have seen this example. I'm not talking about it again. Let's take one more. Here, it is very hard, isn't it, to read this? You have a if condition. then there is a bracket and the single line, bunch of functions are getting executed one by one. Very, very hard to read. Ideally, how you will be doing it? You'll be formatting it properly, like each of the function execution, each line, the curly braces goes off, there is a space between if and the parentheses, all this thing that will be taking care, right? Then this code, look at this. There is a function called save user. But to locate that function save user, you will take some time. Oh, where is that function save user? Ah, okay, it's there. Why? Because a simple function save user, which takes a name and email, and then we are making a call to the database to save that user. Simple, very self-explanatory. But there are comments like create user object, assign name and email, save to the database. And it seems that for each of the line of that code, there is a comment. That is too much. That's overdoing. So over commented code is also a smell. That's what I want to talk about, right? This much is the function, but this big are the comments. And then mix styles. Okay, so what does it mean? You have a function which is written in a very traditional way, the greet function. See, very traditional greet function, pass a name and it returns hello name. And there is another function called by, which is written with JavaScript's arrow function. Here, the reason is same, which is like function creation, but you are creating with the mixed styles. It is good to follow the similar style for function creation throughout in the code base. For example, follow the regular style or the arrow function, whatever matters. You can go for mixed style only when it is absolutely required. Maybe for certain cases, you have to use arrow function because the programming has a demand of it. Because arrow function and these handles things differently than the normal function and the this keyword in JavaScript at least. So if you have a different use cases for that, makes sense. Otherwise, in most of the cases, try to follow similar kind of style. Also here, we could have used the template literals. Instead of it, we have used concatenation using the plus hello plus name. We could have used a template literals, isn't it? Then one more code smell on this category is inconsistent naming. You see how the variables are named throughout the application. Somewhere it's called user underscore name. Somewhere it's called user age, like a capital case. Somewhere it is logged in. I don't know which case it is. Two words, but still it's not a camel case. L is not capital, right? So inconsistent naming is another thing which is going to create a lot of confusion, right? So follow these things properly, remove this code smell to take care of the formatting and readability so that it brings visual clarity and consistency in your code. That's the first one. Let's go to the second one, which is about naming and structure. And the purpose of naming and structure is meaningful naming and the organization of your code. Samples, misleading variable names, unclear function names, magic numbers, etc. Let's see some examples. This is the first one, random naming of files. In a JavaScript project, follow a pattern, right? When you're creating certain kind of file. Maybe a test file, you want to name it as abcd.test.js, name.test.js. All the JS files, you might want to give it a snake case or the camel case.js, but follow the same kind of naming pattern. Here you are seeing the header file.js, title case in the name, .js, j and s are small, then come user utils.js where j and s are in the capital letter, right? That also need to be mindful, right, when you're creating. So it's good to have the standards set in the team so that this kind of randomness doesn't exist, create chaos in our code base. Next one, we have already taken an example of it while explaining that calculate function. This is another one, right? Can you tell me what is x and y here? Can anybody guess? Is it height and width or it is something else? We don't know. So it's always good to be very explicit about the naming that you are giving. One of my mentors told me long back that if you are in the programming, naming a variable is the hardest thing. And name the variable in a way you should think that how you'll be naming your own kid in future. You won't like to call them as A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z, etc. You want to call them with some beautiful names. Treat your variables in the same way. You'll be happy forever. So I think that's right, and I like to follow that. So please, unclear variable names are not something that you want to see. Then look at this function doing multiple things again. It is sending an email. It is doing a log change. There is something that you can definitely change over here. And then this one, this particular function create user, how many parameters it takes? It takes 5, I guess, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So someone calling this create user from wherever possible has to type all these 5 arguments to pass and execute. Can you do something about this? Because this is the problem with actually the structure. Yes, we can do. We'll be seeing that when you go through the refactoring for each of this. Okay, so this is about naming and structure. This kind of code smell contribute to disorganization of your code base, please take care of them. Let's go to the next one, which is about the code complexity. And the purpose of it is to reduce the cognitive load from the developer, because more complex your code is, it put more load in your brain and it brings unnecessary complication. We have spoken about this thing already. Long function doing many things. A function having multiple things, a big gigantic one. Anybody trying to review it, any change happen in any portion of the function is going to be nightmare. Reusability is killed here because a portion of the function could have been used elsewhere. Now for that reason, that portion of the code will be copied and pasted somewhere else. Now tomorrow, if it changes in one place, there is no guarantee someone will be proactively working on changing into other place as well. Problem. So why to get into that problem? Make things simple. Second thing about this class, similar to the function, this is what we call as God class. It does everything, right? It has many responsibilities which we can really make it simple. Then the complex loop logic. What this code snippet is doing, basically it is trying to identify if there is an active user who is an adult. That's it. And in that case, it is going to push it to the active data structure. And it is using an users array, doing the loop and all this thing. Can you break this complex loop logic into something which is much more elegant and easy to read and debug? Going to see them. And then look at this. Can you tell me what is 0, 1 and 0.1 here? It's hard. It's little hard. Maybe 0.1 is easy. That is a discount. What is 0, 1? We don't know. So this usage of magic values. Why you call them magic values? Because nobody knows what are those. So don't use them. Instead, create constant and use the constant which is having a very verbose name for each of this value throughout the application. And tomorrow, if you have to change the discount from 0.1 to 0.3, and if you have used that 0.1 in 20 places, think about the nightmare that all those 20 places you have to go and change from 0.1 to 0.3. Why to do that extra work? Create a constant, and tomorrow if you have to change 0.1 to 0.3, it will be just one place change. That's it. All right, let's move to the next one, which is about logic and maintainability. The purpose of this is how easy is to understand and change behavior. Okay, so look at this. It's a pure duplicate code. Function add user, calling another method, another function called save to DB inside, and after that it's calling log action, saving the user to the DB and logging the action. Function remove user also doing the same thing, saving the user to the DB and log action. Exactly same thing, just the name of the function is different, but underlying they're doing the same thing. It's a duplicate logic. Can we do something about it? Yes, we can do something. Then about this one, here is an unnecessary temporary variable. What we are doing, basically we are multiplying price into quantity to identify the total value. We could have just written one statement, return price into quantity. We don't have to create another temporary variable called total unnecessarily, because we're not doing anything with the total, right? So that kind of thing. Then the deeply nested conditionals. Look at this. First, the check whether user is there. Then go inside, check if user is active. Go inside. Then check user's role is admin. Go inside. And finally, access admin panel. This code can be simplified, can be made very short, very elegant. We're going to see that. Then look at this. There is a switch case without a default. Default case is missing, which can cause trouble. And this one, you all know, right? If you're in JavaScript. Do you see those two equals? You got to use the three equals, right? The strict equality operator than the loose equality operator. So that's about the logic and maintainability. Let us now look into design and architecture problems. So purpose here is the high level design issues to be caught. So what kind of design issues we can see here, like tight coupling, lack of cohesion, I told, all these premature optimizations. Look at this code. It mixes the responsibility. There's something called send email, which is sending the email, but after that it is updating the user status and also adding things to the log, which is not right? And then look at this code. Or the next one, both are kind of similar. Like there is a global variable, but somewhere you are mutating the global variable from a function. Now, how much difficult it is for someone to even trace back, like which function would have changed the value of my global variable. I was expecting certain value for that global variable and I've written this condition, but in between some other function got called in my happy path or sad path of the code, and that function, it seems that it's changed the value of my global variable. and now it is producing messy code. So global mutable state, function mutates external variable, all these things are design and architecture problem. Gets into the code, you need to solve them. Next one, we are talking about error handling and resilience. What kind of problem? Here is the silent failures, solving the errors, missing try catch, that kind of problem. Look at this. We have seen this, right? We are expecting that JSON string is something always parsable. What if it is not? Then there is a try catch, but we are not doing anything with the catch. We just ignored it, right? And then this one. Here we're assuming the request is always going to be successful. What if it fails? We are not doing anything about that. And the last one is about the performance and efficiency. Here the code smell are related to the unnecessary re-rendering, blocking loops, maybe DOM manipulations, and etc. Here is a simple code snippet of the smell problem, that multiple loops over the same array. You have the number, you're trying to find an even number, and then you have to find the double of them. What you are doing, you're writing 4 lines, which could be 1 line simple array method based code. It can be made really, really simple. Then the second one, inline function created on every render. If you are from React, you know how problematic this code could be. Now you know some of the common code smells that impacts many different aspects of your coding. All the 7 different aspects that we have described and given example for that. But the code smells are not limited to only this. There are more. However, many of these, if you know to identify now by yourself while doing the coding, you will be seeing these are like patterns, anti-patterns that has been followed in multiple different places. So if you know how to break it to clean this smelly part of code to a clean code, all those anti-patterns now will be rectified to good pattern and evolve as good pattern across your code base. With that, now we'll be getting into our code editor, and we're going to take some of these code smell examples. We'll be refactoring them, if not all, a lot of them, and rest of it you are going to find it on my GitHub. The link to the GitHub repository is also in the description of this video. You can check that out. Here I have got my editor open, and I have a folder called code smell to clean code. Inside that there is a folder called SRC, and I've created another folder called session. Inside that there is an index.js file where I'm going to put all the code that I'll be mentioning in this session. You can go ahead and find it out from the GitHub repo as well. Alright, let me close this out and get started. The first example, the first one is the bad indentation and lack of spacing. We have spoken about it. I'm not explaining this again, but a cleaner approach would be proper indentation and spacing. If you see over here, there are proper spacing with the operators everywhere, and there are semicolons. If you're using semicolons to terminate, if you're not using semicolon, don't use anywhere. If you're using it, use it everywhere. Even at the end of the function, if you see over here, it was missing, and thus this is much cleaner approach than whatever we had. So the bad indentation and the lack of spacing is now modified with proper indentation and proper spacing. That's the first one. We have seen this smell, isn't it? Very hard to read. If is logged in, and then everything is in the same line. You have show dashboard, update user activity, log analytics, everything in the same line. Very hard to read. Now the cleaner approach would be much more structured and readable, where you have this if block, and inside if block, each of these function execution are in the single line, separated by the new line, and there are adequate space. The first example that we have taken, the indentation and the space, is also been factored in this example. So from smell, this is the cleaner approach, hard to read, from the structured and more readable. Do you remember this mixed styles code smell that we spoke about, where we were using 2 different kind of functions? One is regular JavaScript function, and there was an arrow function. And what the suggestion was, be consistent with the modern syntax as much as possible. So we are using the arrow function in both the cases now, both for greet and buy. Before, greet was with the plain old JavaScript function, buy was with the modern arrow function. Now for both greet and buy, we are using the arrow function. Not only that, here we used to get the concatenation using the plus sign, which is not that great, we know. Instead of that, in JavaScript, we have to use template literals, which almost look like the natural syntax of writing any concatenation. So we have replaced that. For both greet and buy, using the template literals over here. So from mixed styles, we have now consistent modern syntax. I got to mention about this because this is something I find very often whenever I do code review, especially with some of the open source project that I run, inconsistent naming. So we have taken this example before. Now I have made it consistent with the camel case. This is what I generally use for all my variable namings. So if you see user underscore name become username with camel case, same for user age and for is logged in as well. It makes things really consistent throughout the code base. I hope you remember this one, right? The X and Y, and I asked what is X and what is Y for. So in this case, X could be width, Y could be height. Please be explicit, descriptive about your variable names. Very, very important. Remember this code smell? You have a function called createUser where you used to pass 5 parameters. That means if someone is invoking createUser from the caller, you have to pass 5 arguments, the value for each of these parameter. Now it might grow from 5 to 8. Will you add 3 more parameters over here? Instead of that, what you would do, you would rather use an object and you use the destructuring of object and use that as a parameter. The difference over here is in terms of calling create user over here, somebody has to pass it like this. For name, JavaScript, age, example 1, email, learn@tapascript.io, address global, is admin true. Now, there is a high possibility that you might miss something over here while typing. There is a high possibility that there will be few more getting added and you have to again adjust that over here. Instead of that, you can now convert it in such a way that create user accepts an object like this user, where you have these properties name, age, email, address, is admin, everything defined. And while calling the create user, you are just passing this user object. You see the caller doesn't have to really pass each of these parameters because in the definition of the function itself, I am now using object destructuring. So I am destructuring name, age, email, address, is admin, everything from this user object and using it inside the function. So calling of create user in this case, passing 5 things, calling of create user in this case, basically passing just one thing. There is a huge difference because this user, this object might come in both the cases from your API call. Here you are doing extra work, here you are not doing that extra work and you're keeping the code clean. Now the story of magic numbers, the magic values, the numbers, strings, etc. Right? We spoke about this code. We don't know what is 0, 1. We don't know what is 0.1. And if 0.1, 0.1, all this thing gets changed tomorrow in some value, you have to change it in multiple places. The clean methodology is use named constants. So for admin role, you might want to signify with 01. For a different kind of role, you want to give 02, 03, like that. Define each of them using named constants. In this case, we have done admin role 01, discount for admin is 0.1. Now this code is much more cleaner. Not only cleaner, tomorrow if you have to change the discount from 0.1 to 0.3, and if this discount has been used multiple places for some computation, you don't have to change in multiple places. You will come here and you change in one place. That's a big win. So magic values, magic string, magic numbers, make sure you extract them out and use named constants. Remember this long function doing many things? Now we are going to talk about that. So there is a function called handle order, which is doing a lot of things. Now what we have to do to make it clean, we have to use something called decomposition. Decomposition means breaking out. Break out the relevant logical things together and make this function much more simplified. Okay, so first thing is handle order had validate input, check inventory, calculate total, process payment, send email, update analytics. We're going to break it saying validate order, process payment and notify user, because validate input, process payment perfectly makes sense for handle order. Rest of the thing seems to be about notifying user. So if I go inside notify user, is talk about send email and update analytics, and validate order talks about validate input and check inventory. So if you see now validate input, check inventory has gone inside the validate order and we call validate order over here. Process payment is something staying as it is. Notify user is taking basically send email and update analytics. Remaining is the calculate total. I think we will remain this calculate total as it is over here. Yeah. So this is even much more simplified form because the send email, updating analytics, all this kind of things might be reusable aspects and can be used elsewhere. So instead of duplicating these two lines everywhere, now I can call this function, and that will be my reusability. And also I have broken the bigger function into much more smaller function. Remember this complex loop logic where we were identifying the active user who are adult. Now I hinted that we are using array of users, and this is JavaScript where there are plenty of array methods that we get out of the box from the programming language itself. We don't have to really make this code looking so hard using for loop. Rather, we can use the given methods from array like filter, map, etc. to make this code much more expressive and in the functional language style. So this code works, definitely it works, it gives the same output, but this code looks short, elegant and more expressive. I hope it makes sense. Let's look into another logic smell. So here it is a deeply nested condition. We have seen that like if user is active and user is there, then check for role. If user is there, if the user is active, if the role is admin, then access admin panel. We can write the guard clause and early return instead. We can check it like if there is no user, if the user is not active or user role is not admin, just return. Don't process access admin panel function at all. If that's not the case, go ahead and access. So how many lines? From 131 to 137 is now just these two lines. It is much simpler, much elegant, and we have tackled it using the guard clause and early return. Let me know if you're already using some of these styles. Would be great to know like what you are using so that all of us can learn together from your comment. Switch case must handle the unexpected unknown cases always, and that is why you should not missing out on the default case. The smell code over here is missing out on the default case. Admin and user perfectly taken care. But what if the role is not admin, not user? In that case, what are you going to do? So make it very clean by always handling the fallback. In case it is not an admin, not an user, you are going to handle the unknown case and return something. This is much better, and there is nothing unexpected that you're leaving out for this program to happen or output. Here is another smell where we are seeing the first one is relying on primitives. Primitives value means string, integer, boolean, all these things, right? In JavaScript, relying on primitives to model a complex concept or a complex data structure. Now, this is trying to model an order and is saying this is a primitive tapus, some string, tapus address, some number. Nobody understand what exactly this data mean. But clean would be, instead of doing it in this way, create an object. Be descriptive about each of the property of your data structure. This is the customer name. This is customer address. These two I could guess, but I could not guess what is 2 and 299. Now I know, okay, 2 is the number of items that is there in the order and the total price is 299. So this is much more descriptive and you handled it in a proper way. This particular smell is also known as primitive obsession. So don't be obsessed with primitives. Go for a better degree of data structure that available in the language. We also spoke about this smell where the function mutates an external variable. A very bad practice to leave the global variables like this. Instead of that, opt for something called pure function, a function that returns the same output for the same input, right? And the side effect is something that is very much reduced when you're using pure function. So read about pure function. Try to opt for it where you can reduce the global pollution a lot. Let's talk about few smell around error handling, my favorite subject. I spoke at least 2 or 3 times about this particular smell, not talking again. But now I'm talking about how to handle it. I'll be putting this royally inside a try and catch, and inside the catch I'll be handling it like if it is coming inside the catch with an error, it means that the parsing has failed and it is an invalid JSON, right? This is how I will be handling things. So make sure don't go blindly relying on that JSON string is always going to be something that you can parse. On the same line, you have a try catch, but it's royally ignored. There is nothing inside the catch. It's always better that you report out that error, what exactly happened, and do something with it. Maybe you want to log it somewhere, want to show it to the user. So do all that inside the catch block. Don't silently swallow the error messages. There is one more, that you have an array of numbers and you want to figure out the even one and then want to double them. How are you going to do this? One approach is this. Perfectly fine, it works. Even what you have done is you have used the arrays method over here. Great, to filter out the even one, and then again you are doing a for each to do the double. Maybe you can combine them with the using of reduce. There is one more method in array practically for this kind of purpose. So you can rewrite this one using the reduce function, and this is much clean as per me, and reduces a lot of smell because unnecessary declaration of the variable is not required, unnecessary explicit for each loop is not required. All these things that you can actually get rid of and write the code in much more concise way. So these are some of the refactoring that I wanted to call out, but there are more that you can find out. If you can come to github.com/tapascript, go to repositories and find this code smell to clean code. Inside this repo, you have this src, sessions and this index.js file. You'll find everything over there. Now I'm going to talk about two super cool tools that I rely on. One is called ESLint. This is something help me to understand where the code smell is there in my code, and also help me to refactor to make the code clean. And the second one is called Prettier, which is very helpful in terms of formatting your code. Okay. Now how to enable them, how to make use of them, let's look into them one by one. Let's start with Prettier. To use Prettier, make sure that you come to the extension if you're using VS Code. I'm sure like it will be there for most of the editors. Search for Prettier, you will find this extension over here. Make sure that you install that extension. And once you install that extension, it relies on a particular file called prettier.rc. So come over here, create a new file called prettier.rc. This is the file, and this is where you can define what will be the format structure or the metadata for your code base. For example, what is the tab width? Once you do the tab, whether it's going to take 2 spaces, 4 spaces, whether you are going to use single quote everywhere, will there be a trailing comma, you want to use semicolon, you don't want to use semicolon, what will be your end of line. There are plenty of rules that you can specify. For that you can go to the website, or you can get these rules from any of the well-known project, put it in your code and start working. It's pretty simple. This is very helpful in terms of formatting your code. But what I love even more is the ESLint one. Let's take a look into that. Now to use ESLint, I need to install certain configuration. To install certain configuration, I need to make this project, my project, as a node-based project. Okay. For that, I will do like npm init and then -y. This is going to create the package.json file for me with all the project description. If I go inside the package.json file, it doesn't have much. It's very simple package.json file. But this will allow to install other dependencies like ESLint. Now to install ESLint, the command that I'll be giving is yarn space create space at ESLint/config. What does it mean? I'm using yarn as my package manager, so I'm using yarn create. If you use npm, you'll be using npm specific command. If you use pnpm, you'll be using pnpm specific command. Now the documentation of how to use this command, where to use this command is there on ESLint site, and the link to that documentation is in the description of this video. You can find it and choose the command that suits your environment. For my case, it is yarn. Let's go ahead and execute it. Beautiful. So it is asking me a few things. Where are you going to use this lint? Okay, mine is a JavaScript project, so of course JavaScript by default, enter. Now, are you going to use it to check the syntax and find problem, or only for checking the syntax? Of course, I'm going to use it for checking the syntax and finding problems. Is your project using JavaScript modules like import, export, CommonJS, or none of this? Mine actually doesn't use anything, but let's go with import, export because I might use it in future. Okay, what framework your project uses? It doesn't use anything. No React, no Vue yet, so none of this. Does your project uses TypeScript? No, it's a pure JavaScript. And where your project runs, okay, it runs on browser right now. I might be using this project for a lot of DOM manipulation and all, so browser. Would you like to install them now? Yes, go ahead and install. What is your package manager? As I told, I'm using yarn, so I'll be going ahead with yarn. It is installing my stuff. Let's stay cool, and my things have installed. If I go inside package.json now, I'll be able to see all these things I've got installed. Beautiful. Now I have created a file called bad.js. Because this is really bad and it is giving some error already. If I see mouse over, X is assigned a value but never used. This file is full of code smell, there is ID is defined but never used, all these things. But these errors are not enough. Actually, if I run ESLint now, what I have showed you in the session, like a report that ESLint gives. Let's see that. So the command for that would be, let me clear this up. So the command will be npx ESLint and then the path of the file on which we want to run this linting rules. So for me, it is bad.js file, which is inside src and the sessions folder. Let's go ahead and run. It's running. All right, so it's finding out error x is assigned a value but is never used. Error id is defined but never used. Error unused var is assigned never used. So by default, it is shouting for these three. Now the thing is, there are multiple other configuration files exist. For example, one exists from Airbnb, configuration files from XO. Let's pick up one from XO. Again, this is also there in the documentation. Okay, so what I have done, yarn create ESLint/config. Last time we did yarn create ESLint/config alone, but now we are giving a switch called config and we want to use ESLint config XO. Enter. Let it go and run. So it's successful. Again, it is going to ask whether I want to install. Yes, I'm going to install them. I'm going to install using yarn because that's my package manager. The installation is done. Look at this now. The moment installation is done, now this file is fully, bloody file. Every line of this file is having smell. This one, unexpected var. Use late or const instead. You should not be using var, you should be using late or const. Okay, what about this one? Users is never reassigned. Okay, use const, because if you're using late, it means that you have chances that you'll be reassigning a new value or other value to this variable. As you're not doing in this code, use late. How beautiful it is. Here, missing space. So another smell that it is catching. Here, of course, missing space. Okay, over here, ID. It is never used. Yeah, it's never used. This is formatting is completely gone. Missing spaces before opening. Okay, here missing space before opening, missing space before opening. Unexpected to do comment, to do handle other, other things. Here unused var is assigned a value but never used. And over here, new line required at the end of the file. That is not maintained. So bunch of things. This is also missing semicolon. We have opted for semicolon as a rule, so it is missing. Now if I go to the command prompt again, clear this up, and now I will run this one. npx ESLint src session bad.js. Look at this. Now look at the error list. The same thing that it is, showing over here, and I'm going every places and doing a mouse over and finding out, it is listing out everything. All the error, all the warning that I know very, very clearly. This is where each of the code smell that you can capture and you can now fix them. How can you fix them? I am going to show a few of them. You can come over here, for example, var x equals to 10. Here you have something called quick fix. Click on quick fix. Here you have bunch of fixing options. So these are the refactoring option for your code smell. You read which one actually make lot of sense to you and you utilize that. For this case, if it is something like x equals to 10 you have declared but x you have never used, you might want to just remove this variable. That will be an option. Then fix this no var problem. I'll click on this. It made it as let. You see that it fixed the problem, but there is another problem. Another problem is x. X is assigned a value but never used. Let's fix it. Fix this prefer const because it is not reassigned, so I prefer a const. Okay, I still have problem. What is the problem? X is assigned a value but never used. Okay, quick fix. I'll remove the unused variable x. Okay, that's my fix. Still there is a problem. What is the problem? There is an extra space. I'll go ahead and delete this extra space. Can I see what is the problem? Comment should not begin with a lower case. So quick fix would be make it capitalize. Now that problem has gone. You see how beautiful it is. So now each line by line, you can go and you can fix the problem, make this bad.js file as a good.js file and try it out. This is the first task that you have that you need to do. Bad.js file is given in the same repository that I have showed you a while back. Even the good.js file is also given over there, but don't look at it at the first shot. Do with the bad.js and then compare it with good.js. So I hope you like this tooling part as well. Make tool part of your development cycle so that you really don't have to bother about lot of code smell that you'll be introducing otherwise. Also, the reviews and everything will be much more better. Another thing that I want to call out, whenever you are using the tools like Prettier or the ESLint, and if you're working in a team, make sure the configurations for these tools are similar across. If you are using some configuration and your other developer is using a different configuration, that is going to introduce code smell conflict again. For example, you opt for semicolon. The other person doesn't opt for semicolon. You opt for double quote. Other person opt for single quote. So unnecessary in the code review, you will see the diff in the code just because of single quote, double quote, semicolon, no semicolon, all these things, right? So ensure that the configuration option, if you are using Airbnb configuration, XO configuration, default configuration, your own configuration for ESLint, it is normalized across for everyone in the team. Same thing goes for Prettier as well. Look into the documentation of Prettier and ESLint both. The links are there in the description. I'm sure that it will be very, very helpful for you. So this will be a recap, like some of the best practices to follow. Of course, follow consistent naming convention. These are at least that you need to follow. Consistent naming conventions. Write small, focused functions. Don't make functions really big. Even you can consider having a rule of what is the number of line tolerance level you have for functions in the classes, because after that it will force you to break the functions into smaller functions, break the classes into smaller classes, then eliminate all the magic numbers, source of confusions, create name constants. We spoke about that. Prefer clarity versus clever tricks. Tricks are great, you can impress other people, but that's not so good from the maintainability perspective. Prefer clarity always. And this is the point that, including me, not many of the developers like write test. At least start writing somewhere. They force you for a cleaner design. Refactor regularly. No one is going to pay you. No one is going to appreciate for you. But make it part of your coding practice that you need to refactor regularly. You have to remove the smell regularly, not occasionally, not after somebody is saying you. So I want to know you like the session so far. Let me know in the comment. Please share this video. Please like this one. It will be really awesome. And if you want to go deeper, I have a few suggestions for you. There is a book called Clean Code, a handbook of agile software craftsmanship. Is written by Robert C. Martin and of course many other mentors. It's an awesome book. Try to get this book. It's available online for purchase. You can take a look into it, and it covers a lot of common sense, making sense things for CodeSmell and the clean code. Go to martinfowler.com and read the articles, read the thought process over there. I'm sure that you're going to learn a lot about good practices in terms of software development, software engineering, and of course about the CodeSmell clean code. I have created a cheat sheet and posted on my website called tapascript.io. You can come over here, click on books, and here you will find JavaScript clean code cheat sheet. You can always access this cheat sheet, which is having a bunch of examples. Some of them I have already spoken today, and you can take a look into this as well. All the links that I have spoken for you to further research and learn is available in the description of this video. Please take a look into them. Let's put your learning into practice. In the same repo, CodeSmell to clean code, you will find something called a task folder. Inside the task folder, there will be a file called do.js, and in do.js, I have provided few tasks. For example, I asked you to refactor this code. I asked you to remove smell from this code. I asked you to make this code clean. Not only that, you will find a folder called smell inside task with a file called processorder.js. This particular file, process order, having bunch of CodeSmell into it. Once you start looking into it, I'm not telling you, but once you start looking into it, you will figure out there are a bunch of CodeSmells that we have learned from this session are there. So your task would be to remove those CodeSmell. You can use ESLint, or you can go by your own observation, but at the end of it, your task will be to clean those and make it a clean code. I have already provided a version of processorder.js inside the clean folder. If you want to get a hint, you can take a look into that. So please do that. Also look into the README file of CodeSmell to clean code repository. You would find all the instructions over here how to use it. That's all, my friends. I hope you found it really, really useful. This was my honest effort to teach you CodeSmell to clean code. Check my website tapascript.io for many other resources, and my YouTube channel called Tapascript. Links are there in the description of this video. I'm sure I'm going to come back with many other good fundamental resources in the coming days. Stay well, keep learning.